Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to read you a Yahoo News article. The article will be below. Far-fetched Trump speaker bid fuels fundraising pleas on left and right. So you have Republicans and Democrats fundraising off of the belief or the notion that Trump will run for Speaker of the House and replace Nancy Pelosi when Republicans take over the House in 2022. So that's just right around the corner. And or the belief that he'll be nominated. So you already have prominent Republicans in the House of Representatives saying that they will nominate President Trump. He got 74 million Americans to vote for him, despite 92% negative media coverage. He was the antithesis of a despot. Generally, despots use their intelligence operatives and chiefs to go after political opponents. Generally, despots don't lose Supreme Court decisions. You can look, generally despots and authoritarians have virtual complete control of the media narrative. All of those things that he had to deal with, the Democratic Party, that describes the authoritarians within the Democratic Party a lot more than the Orange Menace President Trump. So the article here will be below. That's from Yahoo News, and there will be some other articles too in Forbes. Republican representative fundraises off promise to nominate Trump as Speaker of the House. Insider, is fundraising off his promise to nominate Trump for House Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, President Trump got 74 million Americans. He got a greater percentage of the non-white vote than any Republican candidate in 60 years. One rebuttal is, no, he didn't. Bush got a greater percentage. Yeah, well, Bush didn't have 92% negative media coverage by one estimate or one study. They accused him of working with Russia, which gets me to the implosion on the left that I predicted or that I talked about 4 years ago, 5 years ago, in 2016, 2015, 6 years ago. I used to be the biggest Bernie Sanders booster on the internet, according to the Huffington Post. I used to be the unofficial scribe of Sanders' most hardcore voters, according to the Washington Post. Years back, TYT, let's just say they tried to disparage me, and I defended myself and corrected I corrected the record, of course, just like I do if anybody tries to, critique me in a manner that I don't feel is accurate or fair. To a much greater extent, they've gone after Jimmy Dore, and to a much greater extent, they've gone after Aaron Mate. Two very, very genuine, good journalists. I think that I have a great deal of respect for Jimmy Dore and Aaron Mate. I'm sure that they disagree with me on a lot of things. I don't believe that they support President Trump at all. I know Jimmy doesn't. I know that Mr. Mate doesn't either. I'll get to my thoughts on TYT and Kyle Kulinski and The Rising and another gentleman that was kicked off of Twitch for anti-Semitism, but then I think unbanned because the left never actually abides by its own paradigm of the cancel culture they create. But anyway, I'll get to that disaster, absolute disaster for TYT and people associated with them in a second. I did the Humanist Report, actually. I did a segment on, he mentioned my name in an apology for interviewing somebody that his viewers found objectionable. And I'm looking and I'm saying, the entire left, if you put scorpions and tarantulas in one tiny little box, you'd get more unity than the American left. I'll get to that in a second, okay? So in a couple of minutes, stay tuned, because you'll want to hear my take on that. Hit subscribe to this channel, by the way. Hit subscribe to H.A. Goodman's other channel. I'll be discussing that on H.A. Goodman's other channel. The link is below in the pinned comment. If you want to support my voice, my Patreon is below. I don't have $20 million in venture capital funding like the wealthy socialists. Okay, I can tell you right now, well, I'll get to that in a second. I don't have $20 million in venture capital funding. If you want to support my work via Patreon, the Patreon link is in the pinned comment. And be here on the live streams every day at 3 p.m. Pacific. Ladies and gentlemen, it was President Trump who removed Americans, who forced the withdrawal of Americans from our longest-running counterinsurgency conflict. Biden is trying to take credit for it, but it's obviously President Trump, his populist policies are actually pragmatic, unlike many of the policies that, I thought Bernie Sanders would fight for his foreign policy. He mentioned that he wanted to bring home Americans, so that he wanted to end quagmires. That was the biggest reason my articles went viral in The Hill, the Huffington Post, Salon, other places. I've been published in the Jerusalem Post. Specifically, I'd love to talk about, well, I'll get to that in a second too. But you go from Bernie Sanders to Trump because you want you want to scale back U.S. foreign policy. You don't want the Lincoln Project, Bill Kristol and his organization, Bush's neoconservatives, to vote alongside Democratic socialists or far-left edgy socialists. They're all Brian Stelter, Chris Cuomo. It's the same. The difference between CNN and the edgiest lefty socialist is non-existent. They're always going to vote Democrat no matter what. I like President Trump because he completely breaks the mold. We had record low unemployment. We had wages increasing faster than in previous years under President Trump. We had record low black and Latino unemployment. He allocated more funding to historically black colleges and universities than any president ever, signed prison reform legislation, signed an executive order combating anti-Semitism on college campuses. And it's interesting that the left, one individual that the people like Kyle Kulinski and others speak with regularly was kicked off of Twitch for anti-Semitism because he wanted to obliterate and completely decimate. Now listen to this. These are the same people who want to fight the 1930s and 1940s Germans. He wanted to completely level the only Jewish country in the world. Think of that for a second. That was his idea of a critique. But anyway, I'll get to the left in a moment. President Trump would make a fantastic Speaker of the House. If he replaces Pelosi, the country would be in a much better place. Media, intelligence operatives, the far left, I'm being redundant here, they're all pretty much on the same team, espouse the same absurd tinfoil hat fantasies. Trump never worked with Russia. Anyone who told you that he did was just regurgitating the most vapid propaganda. There was not a shred of evidence, no evidence at all, that he ever worked with Russia. You would know this from $30 billion worth of an intelligence apparatus just from the 3 intel agencies that accused him of such an absurd thing. Then they said he tried to pressure Zelensky, which President Zelensky himself stated that wasn't true. And we know from the emails of the president's son that he had every reason to ask for an investigation within that country, and every reason to question whether or not Biden or his son engaged in inappropriate or misconduct or illegal activity. We know that the current president will very likely, I think that he'll get impeached. Republicans, when they take over the House, they'll be Trump Republicans. They had 10 or so that voted to impeach him. When the mayor of D.C. and the attorney general of D.C. didn't level charges because of based on January, they say, oh, well, he compelled people to commit violent acts. Well, why wasn't he charged in D.C.? Okay, the mayor of D.C. and the attorney general of D.C. could have leveled charges. They didn't. There was no evidence that he had anything directly to do with the tragedy that took place. Meanwhile, you have $1 to $2 billion in property damage and over 25 lives lost, according to Wikipedia, for very, very peaceful protests that could have been spurred on by rhetoric from Democrats. So they're already fundraising on Trump replacing Pelosi. I think it would be fantastic because President Trump, in terms of accomplishments, was a very, very good president. Okay? He single-handedly reversed U.S. foreign policy, which is exactly why I went from Bernie Sanders to President Trump. Now, getting to the left, the implosion of the left, Kyle Kulinski is very intelligent, very successful, joined TYT, and then, like anybody who joins TYT, his viewership expanded. TYT, and from what I understand, they got $20 million in venture capital funding. That's fine. Don't pretend that you're not capitalists. Don't pretend that you're these democratic socialists if you're always going to vote Democrat. In a very bizarre way, there's a certain level of, well, I shouldn't say I respect, but at least they're honest. Sam Cedar, David Pakman, Kyle Kulinski, Cenk Uygur are very honest because their actions speak louder than words. They will always, and TYT in general, they will always vote Democrat. This is why Jimmy Dore is amazing or wonderful or honest or actually more genuine, I should say. They're always going to vote Democrat, and they let you know. Jimmy Dore will not always vote Democrat. I'm not saying he'll vote Republican, but if you're the far left edgy socialist, who I would love to debate. So there's a gentleman named Vosh who was kicked off of Twitch for saying that he wanted to obliterate a country I had my bar mitzvah in. I would love to debate him on that quote or his views of Israel and see if he still feels that way. If he still wants to completely wipe a country off the map, and if he feels that's legitimate critique or anti-Semitism, which of course I believe that is the epitome of anti-Semitism. But anyway, so it's contactgoodman78@gmail.com. Would love to debate Vosh on this channel or Kyle Kulinski on his views of Israel or anyone on the left on their views pertaining to Israel or President Trump. Okay, just email me at contactgoodman78@gmail.com. Okay, because I think that, like any country, there are problems that they have to address. But I think that Israel is a very strong ally of the United States of America, and it's very good that they're an ally. And in terms of human rights and moral considerations, they're surrounded by countries, and we can debate, they're surrounded by countries that are mired with an infinitely worse military endeavors, behavior, laws against their own citizens. So we can discuss that, okay? You focus on one country and ignore the tremendous human rights violations of the countries surrounding it. There's an ulterior motive there. But anyway, what's happening right now with Kyle Kulinski and TYT is that people are realizing, and this is not in any disrespect at all, the difference between Chris Cuomo, or Brian Stelter, or Maddow, or Joy Reid, or anyone at the Washington Post or New York Times. The difference between them and Mr. Kulinski or Cenk Uygur is non-existent. There is no difference. That's why they didn't want to have Jimmy Dore on the Rising. There's no difference between people who will always, if you have a far left, edgy democratic socialist and a centrist liberal Democrat, if you have a person who wants Medicare for all and pontificates and is an, rational, logical atheist. And they devote their lives in an irrational manner to devoting this blind allegiance to a political party. And you see that now. And I basically said, because he would go after me from time to time because I said Clinton deserved to get indicted for top secret intelligence on private servers. It wasn't important to the Washington Post or to CNN or to the average Democrat. So then it wasn't important to TYT and pundits associated with them. See, the paradigm does not start with the far left edgy socialists or the liberal or the progressives at $20 million venture capital funded networks. The paradigm doesn't start with them. It starts with, if you want to say Brennan or Comey or the Washington Post or the New York Times, it starts with the American political establishment. That's just the way it is. That's how you get $20 million in venture capital funding. Not if you want Green Party policies. Not if you want to remove Americans from counterinsurgency conflicts. Not if you want to impose tariffs, which, by the way, haven't been reversed by Biden, last I checked. Trump, everything he said was sensationalized. So it's interesting how they demand context and nuance when Democrats make the most absurd claims. But with Trump, it's this, oh my God, he's, it's only a whistle that certain people can hear. It's all of this nonsense when at the end of the day, he did good things. That's why a greater percentage of non-white voters voted for President Trump than any Republican in 60 years. But if you want to just say, that's not exactly true. It is true, but he did better among non-white voters than in 2016. Why? If all of these wonderful left-leaning progressives find him despicable and the epitome of bigotry, why did the non-white vote increase in percentages for Trump? More African American and black voters, more Latino and Hispanic voters, more Asian American voters, more Jewish voters voted for President Trump in 2020 than 2016. Why? If he's such a horrible human being. But see, the worst thing to ever happen to TYT was Jimmy Dore. It's the worst thing to ever happen. Because they got somebody who was honest, who at the end of the day wouldn't play ball with the Democratic Party. Everybody from Major League Baseball to Hollywood Twitter to Twitter itself to social media algorithms to the venture capital funded socialists to every far left leaning voice that votes Democrat is part of a racket and a public relations monstrosity only to help one political party. Nothing to do with Medicare for all, which they don't even want to force a vote for. You get people who are vote blue no matter who. This is the same type of dogma as religion. These are generally atheists who fancy themselves the most moral and intellectually, morally superior and intellectually evolved people on the planet, who are completely obedient to the Democratic Party, so much so that they'll twist themselves into contortions to always every 4 years or 2 years say, well, vote blue no matter who. Vote blue no matter who. That's not how you change the Democratic Party. And I'm not even on the left anymore. I don't really care. The Democrats are always going to be marginally more liberal than Republicans. And in many respects, Republicans are far more liberal than Democrats, especially on foreign policy. You have you are voting alongside the Lincoln Project. Do you understand this? If you're voting alongside Bush, Cheney, and Rumsfeld's neoconservatives, if you always vote Democrat and then complain about empire, Bernie Sanders is voting alongside the Lincoln Project, Bill Kristol, and other neoconservatives who in the Bush administration. The Democratic Socialists are voting alongside Bush administration hawks. That should tell you something. That's the main reason I couldn't ever vote for Clinton when I was a lifelong Democrat. But see, what took place is when it came down to defending a friend, certain TYT pundits didn't have the integrity to do so. I always knew this would happen, and my opinion on the matter is worthless completely irrelevant. I'm no longer on the left. Nobody probably cares. But it's the drama on the left is very much a part of who I am. Not drama, but the dynamics of how they run influenced me a great deal. It pushed me towards President Trump and pushed me towards the realization that, you know what? Most of his image is a manufactured, fabricated, orchestrated nightmare created by Democrats. He says things that he shouldn't have said. I do agree. He shouldn't have disparaged NFL athletes. He shouldn't have said a lot of other things. But it's not as bad as what Biden stated to Charlemagne the God. Not nearly as bad as that. Which is why, at the end of the day, he did better among the non-white vote than he did in 2016. But anyway, you see their true colors. You see who they are. When your friend is in need, or when you are backing absurd, libelous claims or slanderous claims, or you're silent on them, that's all you need to know. And do you know? And like, hey, more power to him. God bless. That's fantastic. You know how much money these left-leaning socialists are making? Hey, I can't complain myself. Thank God, I have my channel's great. I'm always in pristine relationship with YouTube, because every segment I do, there are articles in the description, and I give my take on them. So I always have a great rapport. But I don't make, and I don't think most, like, the knock on me by some people is, oh, well, I became a supporter of President Trump for money. No. The money is being edgy enough and always telling your viewers to vote Democrat no matter what. That's where the money is. And these people make an obscene amount of money every month just from Patreon alone. But it's a racket, and it's a public relations show that's kind of being revealed by Jimmy Dore. It's really interesting. Give me your thoughts below. Hit subscribe right now to this channel. Hit subscribe to H.A. Goodman's other channel below. Thank you.